Charles does have some views which are completely in line with woke and completely damaging to the United Kingdom. The next Prime Minister, assuming he's pro-British, needs to have a chat with the King and say, this isn't on.
Ben Habib, I really need to speak to you about King Charles. And this is a difficult conversation. I'm always very honest with my audience about why I find this difficult. Because I am a royalist and I am a monarchist. And I'm always torn when it comes to criticism of our monarch. And the very lucky thing with Queen Elizabeth II is that we were privileged and blessed to have in her someone who really didn't put a foot wrong over decades and decades. It was always going to be a difficult transition. And of course, his reign has been so traumatized by the fact that this very serious incurable cancer diagnosis came early. And of course, for someone who's waited his entire life for that job, it's incredibly difficult. So I say all of that, not as a caveat, but just as an honest feeling about the fact that in some ways I find this conversation uncomfortable. However, we have to have it. There is huge concern, Ben Habib, that King Charles is not operating as the defender of the faith and is indeed moving so close to not just protecting but also actively promoting the Islam faith over that of Christianity as the head of the Church of England. Now, Elon Musk, who, as we know, is a major Advance UK ally, has been very open about his concerns about the future of the Church of England. And you are one of the only political leaders in the country who has been brave enough to tackle this subject. Do you think we should? Because I know this is one of the number one concerns of my audience. Trust me. They are hugely...
King Charles.
Yes.
Yeah.
King Charles specifically and Islam.
Yeah.
That issue. It is one of the number one concerns. It is one of the number one issues in my mailbag.
Yeah.
And no one's talking about it, Ben, apart from the people.
Yeah.
You are. So can you just explain to me what your concern is, and is there anything we can do about this?
I think a few things. I'm like you, I'm troubled by having to talk about the King, because in my heart, I am a believer in the monarchy, a believer in the Constitution, the unwritten Constitution of the United Kingdom, of which the monarchy is a considerably important part. It may only be a titular head of state and a titular head of the church, but it is nevertheless very symbolic, and it carries with it great weight with the British people. And I'm very reluctant to mess around with that. And I won't mess around with that, to be honest. I will leave things...
Advance is not calling for a republic.
We're not calling for a republic.
That's a relief.
There are many, many other things that we need to sort out before that, before we even... We're not going to consider that. We need to settle this country.
Yes.
Of course, if the country was settled and we understood our constitution as it should be applied, then the King of England wouldn't have the opportunity to do anything which was damaging to the fabric of the country. But it seems to me that the individual, Charles, does have some views which are completely in line with woke and completely damaging to the United Kingdom, including promoting this net zero nonsense, which is so economically harmful. And leaving that aside, there are two sides to the Islam debate. The first side is the debate about Islam itself. And what I say to people is we can get into the weeds on Islam, but actually the only thing you need to know about Islam, the only thing you need to know is that the Quran is the word of God, and as transcribed by Prophet Muhammad and dictated to him by the angel Gabriel. It's the word of God. Therefore, it is perfect, and it is incapable of debate, and it is rigid, and it doesn't evolve with time. That makes it undebatable, which is why they want to pass Tariq Ali, what was his name, the Labour MP who wants to bring in protection for the Abrahamic faith. What he wants is a protection against the debate on Islam. Now, if you wish to prevent debate of any ideology, it makes that ideology fundamentally incompatible with our very delicate Western democracy, our liberal democracy. So Islam, in its fundamental sense, and Nigel Farage and I will differ here, because Farage will talk about the need to challenge extremist Islam, and I would say of course you've got
There's
to...
no such thing.
Well, I mean...
It all is.
And also extremism, to say you're going to challenge extremism is a statement of the blooming obvious, isn't it?
Well, Gad Saad says extreme Islam doesn't exist. You
Yeah,
just
so-
have Islam.
Can you believe that more than half of you are watching this video but not subscribed? So please do me a huge favor, click the subscribe button now, turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to all of our brand new Outspoken videos.
I think there are Muslims who... So when I was born in Pakistan, Islam was going through an enlightened period. If you look at photographs of women, for example, from the 1950s and 60s and early 70s, and in Iran, Iran, Iraq, United Arab Emirates, Pakistan, they were all dressed in a self-evidently kind of Western way. Islam then did what Islam will always do over time, which is go back to its fundamental root. It's essentially a fundamentalist religion because it wants to bring back everything to the Word of God, to the prescriptive Word of God. It's also more than a religion. It's a legal practice. It's a way of life. You know, Sharia law is part and parcel of being a Muslim. So it wants
And
to
being
yank,
practiced
it
in
wants
the
to-
United Kingdom. now,
and being
by the way.
practiced. So it wants to yank that all back. That makes it fundamentally, and I use the word on purpose, fundamentally incompatible with our very delicate liberal democracy that we have in the United Kingdom. So that's, and we can then go on. I think that's all you need to understand about Islam to know that it poses challenges, fundamental challenges to the United Kingdom.
But you mentioned the Quran. I mean, there are videos
Yeah.
of King Charles quoting from the Quran, and that's why people
Yeah.
have such issues that he
Yeah.
seems to celebrate major Islam moments like Ramadan much more than he
Yeah,
does Easter
he-
or the Bible.
There needs to be the next prime minister, assuming he's pro-British, needs to have a chat with the king and say, you know, this isn't on. You're the head of the church.
And would you?
Absolutely, I would. It's not on. And this is the flip side of this is the other side of the argument, which I really want to make as part of Advance, is that we're not just culturally a Christian country, we are constitutionally a Christian country. And that's why the bishops still sit in the Lords, though Starmer wants to take them out. We're not a multi-faith country, we're a Christian country. And we've got to make that case. You might recall in my speech at the Unite the Kingdom rally, I pointed to the flags and said, perhaps people find our flags offensive because actually they represent our Christianity. The St. George's flag, St. Andrew's, St. Patrick's when it comes to Ireland, and St. David for Wales. These are all the patron saints of our four nations. And so that's offensive when they're represented in a flag to anyone who wishes to remove our Christian identity. The national anthem, Dan, is a hymn. Jerusalem is a hymn. The national anthem, effectively for England, is a hymn, as is the Flower of Scotland, and so on. And we've got to make the case, and we've got to propagate Christianity through our constitution and culturally again in the United Kingdom.
Well, the
because
problem-
we vacated the space.
Well, of course, and one of the issues with Starmer, and it's one of many, is that he is an atheist. But it's not just that he is an atheist alone. It's the fact that he has, for example, hired as his Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, who is on the record, both in interviews and also in Parliament, by the way, saying every decision that she makes, the first thing that matters to her is her Muslim faith. It is her number one priority in life. She's on the
She
record
said
of
that.
saying that.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
and the problem is...
and that cannot be right.
Well, no, but we have a king who, because this government is so weak, Ben, we know is influencing politics in a way that never happened under the late Queen Elizabeth II. Of course, she had her private conversations, but you know it's more than that with Charles. He's formed a close relationship with Ed Miliband. He had a close relationship with Angela Rayner. He has a close relationship with Starmer. He is much, much more influential because this government is so weak.
Every day, we're not just consuming news, we're being conditioned by it. Headlines aren't written to inform, they're engineered to provoke outrage, shape loyalties, and drive clicks. What's sold as reporting is too often a carefully packaged narrative crafted to steer the way we see the world. It's not just the journalists. Behind them are corporate owners, political operatives, and algorithms deciding which stories dominate the conversation and which ones vanish without a trace. The result? A public that's divided, misled, and increasingly skeptical of what truth even means. But there is a way to break free from the spin. Ground News brings together headlines from over 50,000 sources across the globe. But what really makes it powerful is the transparency. You don't just see the stories, you see the political bias behind every source, the ownership ties, and the coverage breakdown across the spectrum. That's why over 1 million people have downloaded Ground News. Even the Nobel Peace Center praised it as an excellent way to stay informed, avoid echo chambers, and expand your worldview. And you can see for yourself at ground.news/outspoken. Now, my favorite feature is the blind spot feed. It shows you which stories are blowing up on one side of the aisle, but barely mentioned on the other. It's the clearest way to see media bias in action. So let's look at a recent story that the left is ignoring. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman accused Democrats they have forgotten why we lost in 2024, urging the party to avoid a government shutdown that would harm Americans. The right frames this as a rebuke of his own party, as Fetterman has broken with progressives on numerous issues, including on Israel, and in not referring to Trump as an autocrat. On the other side, the right is mostly ignoring that Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has paused a 2026 electric vehicle mandate and announced a new Buy Canadian policy as it adjusts to US tariffs. The left frames Carney's decision as a betrayal of climate initiatives while simultaneously applauding his focus on affordability. With every story, Ground News shows you the entire spectrum of who's reporting from left, from right, from the centre, how reliable each source is, and who owns each outlet. It's everything the corporate press doesn't want you to see. And right now, you can get 40% off the Vantage plan, which gives you unlimited access to all the features I personally use for less than a cup of coffee. Just visit ground.news/outspoken, click the link in the description box below, or scan the QR code on screen. That's ground.news/outspoken. But now, back to the show.
Yeah, and he's on the side of the government's thinking.
Yes.
Which, so
well, we know that on the environment,
So, yeah,
don't
absolutely.
we? And
So
I think we also know that on Islamophobia.
Yeah, and he said the other day, people said, Ben, don't give it too much store, but he said the other day there is no border between France and England.
Yes.
And so I thought, what?
Well, then you have no kingdom.
Then you have no kingdom.
And that's my real concern.
Yeah.
Does he not understand that?
But I think he's a collateral. I've got to be careful because I don't want to denounce the king, but he's a collateral.
I understand.
He's a collateral consequence of the collapse of our parliamentary system.
Exactly. If we had a stronger government,
we wouldn't need to worry about where the king is. He would hold his views privately if he had weird views. But, you know, I heard a speech the other day given by David Cameron when he was Prime Minister, banging the drum about how we're going to get Muslims into this place of authority, that place of authority. Why are we wishing to import a foreign religion, a foreign ideology into the fabric of a Christian country? I don't understand this obsession with wishing to do it. I'm half Pakistani. My dad's a Muslim. By the way, let me just say something. I know lots and lots of Pakistanis who look at fundamentalist Islam and go, oh my God, we don't want to go there. We do not want that. And even Saudi is now liberating itself. The UAE, there are many people in the UAE, including its prime minister, who looks at the United Kingdom and says, you've got groups
don't they ban the Muslim Brotherhood and we don't?
Absolutely. And a whole load of other Muslim groups that have been founded in the UK and practicing in the UK are proscribed in the UAE and not here. This isn't a thing about trying to nail people on their faith. It's a fundamentalist religion. And the form of practice taking place is fundamentalism.
But I think the fear, Ben, just to wrap up, is that I believe this government has two overarching priorities. One, introducing digital ID. It's been Tony Blair's dream for decades, as we know. Starmer is one of his puppets who is probably going to make it happen. But I believe the other is to introduce somehow, some way, this definition of Islamophobia that would effectively introduce a blasphemy law via the back door. In Shabana Mahmood, there is the perfect Home Secretary in which to do both of those things. I mean, she's very open about both of those issues.
Yeah.
You know, she's been open about digital ID since becoming Home Secretary. But if you look at her previous comments on the Islamophobia law, she is completely behind it. And you've got a king who I think also wants to make that happen. So to me, I feel like because the government is such a mess in so many ways, some of us are maybe not talking enough about the threat of digital ID and the threat of this Islamophobia law.
But the direction of travel is inescapably clear, which is that ever greater state control, ever greater mingling, coalescing into some kind of amorphous global governance system. And this is the point, I think, Dan, the fundamental point. The people Starmer calls far right are people who believe in this country, believe in borders, believe in a sovereign United Kingdom, freedom of speech, democracy, getting rid of the EU, equality under the law, very fundamental British things. He finds them far right. He finds them repugnant because Starmer is anti-British. Starmer is ashamed of the country that he has been given responsibility for. And we've got to recognize that. And if you're anti-British, then of course mass migration is fine. He can't bring himself to call illegal migrants illegal. He calls them irregular migrants. I mean, and that basically legalizes their illegality, doesn't it? And if you can't get your language right, you haven't got a hope in hell of governing properly. Starmer's anti-British. A lot of people in the Conservative Party are anti-British, anti the British state. And they want to take our borders down. They want us to be part of the EU. They want us to give up our identity. What better way to do it than to import lots of cultures into this country? And what better way to make the case for digital ID than to sow discord? The discord that he says we were bringing at the weekend over the United Kingdom march was nothing. We wanted peace. We want peace. Let me be clear. Starmer, if you're listening, we want peace. He's the one sowing discord. He's the one who will use that discord to bring in ever more draconian laws. And I just want to say one thing.
Please.
We, patriots on our side, need to be very careful. I hear people on our side saying, bring back capital punishment. Let's give the police more power so that they can clamp down on pro-Palestinian marches, etc. Wake up. The state is against us. You do not want to be giving this state any more power. This state has already legalized killing old people. This state has already legalized abortion up to 9 months, basically killing babies. This state should not be given any more power. We must not be calling for things we will come to regret.
A very good thought, but I'm just thinking, goodness me, a chilling thought. I completely agree with you, but a British Prime Minister in slippery Starmer who is anti-British. And that is what we're facing. I think Ben Habib is completely right on that, but that's why the battle ahead is actually going to be so perilous. But Ben Habib, Advance UK leader, so brilliant to have you face to face in our studio for the first time, but you know you're never banned here. So
thank you. And I'm delighted that you're not an AI creation.
No, I'm very, very real. You can pinch me.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go wherever you are.